We are going to have a look at changing the subject of equations or formulas where there are 3 steps required. So if you've watched the 2-step video, essentially it's the exact same idea, except this time there's going to be an extra thing that you're going to need to do to be able to change the subject. Now for all of these, I'm going to make n the subject of my formula. So I'm going to start it the same way. I'm going to consider if I was to substitute in for n, what's the first thing that would happen to it? Well, in this question here, the first thing that would happen is I would square n, then I would multiply it by 2, and then I would take away 3. So to change the subject, I'm going to have to work backwards through that list. So the first thing, or the last thing that's happening to the end is I'm taking away the 3. So that's the first thing that I'm going to have to unpick to be able to change the subject. Now I'm going to have to do the opposite, or the inverse of take away 3. So I'm going to have to add 3 to both sides. Equals 2n squared. Now the next thing is timesing by 2. So the opposite of that, or the inverse, is going to be divide by 2. Now I'm going to divide everything by 2 on the left-hand side, so I'm going to write it as one big fraction, equals n squared. And the last thing, the inverse of squaring, is square rooting, and you must make sure that you are square rooting everything. So it's a big square root with everything underneath, and that equals n. And then I rewrite it with n on the left-hand side, square root of y plus 3 all over 2. Now the best way to maximize your time spent watching this video is to have a pen and paper ready, or a pencil and paper ready. You can do it in your jotter if you want, but try the ones on the right-hand side. And so every time that you're doing these, you need to make sure that you're listing these operations, you're working backwards through that list, and that you're writing it with the new subject on the left-hand side. So can you take a minute, pause the video, and then try the one on the right-hand side, then press play to see how you get on. So I'm going to cube it, then I would be timesing by 3, then I would be adding 4. So let's work backwards to that list. I'm going to take away the 4 from both sides first. I'm going to divide by the 3, and then I'm going to cube root everything, and then write it with my new subject on the left-hand side. So it's the cube root of y take away 4 all over 3. Let's try one that looks slightly different. So again, 3-step question that looks slightly different. Here, if I was to sub in, I would times by 2, then I would divide by 5, and then I would be taking away a squared. So working backwards, I would add a squared to both sides. I would then times by 5. Now if I'm timesing by 5, I'm just going to write it with a bracket. And then I would divide by 2. And again, making sure that it's all over 2. You're dividing all of it by 2. And then n equals 5 lots of y plus a squared all over 2. Again, please pause the video. Take as long as you need to try the one on the right-hand side, then press play to see how you get on. So if you were subbing in for n, which is what you're trying to make the subject, you'd times by 4. Then you would divide by 3, and then you would take away b squared. So working back through that, I would add b squared onto both sides first. Now notice I don't square or square root, okay? That squared isn't acting on the n. At no point am I squaring what I'm trying to make my subject. So I can simply just add the b squared onto both sides, and then I don't need to worry about that square. Then I would times both sides by 3, and that would equal 4n, and then I would divide by 4. And then I would rewrite it with n on the left-hand side, like so. Right, let's keep going. Let's try one that looks slightly different. So here, first of all, I would square the n, then it's inside the brackets, I'd have to take away the 3 first, and then I would be timesing by 2. So to undo that, I'm going to have to divide by 2. I would then add the 3 to both sides. Now notice the 3 doesn't go into that fraction. Okay, I'm dividing by 2, then I'm adding 3, so I have to keep it separate. And apologies, I've just spotted I've written as divide by 3, not divide by 2. So I'll change that. So last step, so I've added 3 to both sides. Now I need to square root it all, and it goes over everything. So y over 2 plus 3 is equal to n. So n is equal to the square root of y over 2 plus 3. Right, one for you to try. Can you please try the one on the right-hand side? Pause the video, take as long as you need. Remember, you should be doing this for each one to maximize what you're getting out of watching this video, maximizing what you get out of the time spent watching this video. So first of all, you would square it, then you would take away 4, then you would times by 5. So let's go backwards through it. You would divide by 5 first, that will give me n squared minus 4. You would then add 4 to both sides, and then you would square root everything that's on the left-hand side. So n equals the square root of y over 5 plus 4. Again, let's look at another one, again, that looks slightly different. Same process. Well, n is being squared first, then it's being divided by 2, and then you are taking away 3 from it. So let's work backwards through that list. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. I'm going to times by 2, and I can just use my bracket notation to times by 2. And then I need to square root it. So 2y plus 3. Make sure that square root goes over everything, because when you're square rooting that entire side, and that equals n. Or you're square rooting both sides, n squared is just going to go to n, and then the square root of everything that's on the left-hand side. And so n equals the square root of 2y plus 3. Again, pause the video, take as long as you need to try the one on the right-hand side, then press play to see how you got on. So you would be squaring the n first, you would then divide by 3, you would then take away 7. So you would add 7 to both sides, we would multiply by 3, and then we would square root both sides, and on the left-hand side, you would square root everything that's there. So you must make sure that your square root covers everything, and then n equals the square root of 3y plus 7. Right, a couple more, I think maybe 2 or 3 more. Again, same principle, 3 steps. So you're squaring. This time, it's on the top of your fractions. You're actually taking away 1 next, and then you're dividing it by 4. So to work back the way through that, to unpick it, you're going to times by 4 first. That's going to be 4y equals n squared minus 1. You're going to add the 1 to both sides. And we've seen this a couple of times. We're going to square root. And so that square root covers everything. And then we write it with n equals, on the left-hand side, 4y plus 1. Again, same as before. Pause the video, take as long as you need, then press play to see how you get on. We're going to square first of all, then we're going to take away 3, then we're going to divide by 2. We're going to work backwards through that. So times by 2, I'll get 2y equals n squared minus 3. I would add the 3 onto both sides, and then I am going to square root both sides, and then rewrite it with n equals 2y plus 3. Again, make sure that that square root covers everything. Now, again, slightly different looking one. Same process. It's in the bracket, you're taking away 3 first. Then it's in the numerator, so you're going to be squaring it, and then you're going to divide it by d. So to undo that, I'm going to have to times both sides by d. Now, I'm timesing d by y, so I'm going to get dy, and I put the d first because I do it alphabetically, d, then y. That's going to be equal to n minus 3 all squared. Then I'm going to have to square root it, so the square root of dy is going to be equal to n minus 3. I no longer need that brackets, because the brackets are there because it was telling me that I was squaring it, so when I square root it, I no longer need the bracket. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides, equals n. And I rewrite it with n on the left-hand side, dy plus 3. Notice that that plus 3 isn't underneath my square root, because when I square rooted both sides, the only thing that was on the left here, so that was here, the only thing that was on the left was dy. So that is the only thing that gets square rooted. The plus 3 goes to the side of that. It does not go underneath. Okay, it's different to the ones we were doing before. When I square rooted here, it was 4y plus 1. So all of that had to go underneath the square root. In this case, it was only the dy. So be very, very careful with that. It's only the thing that's on that other side when you're square rooting both sides that goes underneath your square root. Anything that you change after that doesn't go underneath your square root sign. Okay, it just goes to the side of it. Or in front of it if you're timesing, or underneath if you're dividing. Okay, but it does not join that dy underneath your square root. Right, pause the video, take as long as you need, then press play to see how you get on. So first you're taking away 1, then you're squaring, then you're dividing by b. So I'm going to times by b, both sides. That'll be by equals n minus 1 all squared. I'm going to square root both sides. So it'll be the square root of by equals n minus 1. I no longer need my brackets because I'm no longer squaring it. And then add 1 to both sides. I'll get by. And notice again, outside the bracket, outside the square root, sorry, is my plus 1. So n is equal to the square root of by plus 1. Now I might need to, yes, I'm going to give myself some extra room. Now, last one that we're going to try, and let me give myself some more space. So this time, I'm going to have, if I subbed in, I would be squaring it, then I would be adding 3, and then I'm square rooting all of that. So the first thing that I'm going to do when I'm working back is I'm going to square both sides. So I'm going to get y squared equals n squared plus 3. Then I'm adding 3, so do the opposite to both sides. So I'm going to take away 3 from both sides, and then it's n squared. So to work out or to get n as a subject, I would square root both sides. So n is equal to the square root of y squared minus 3. Now yours is going to look slightly different. I want you to go through the same process and write in what it is that you're doing each time. So here, first thing that you're doing is you're square rooting n. So you're square rooting it, then you're going to add 3 because it's part of the numerator, then you're going to divide by b. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to times both sides by b. That's going to be the square root of n plus 3. And the next thing is adding 3, so I'm going to take away 3 from both sides. That's equal to n, square root of n. And then to get n on its own, to make it the subject, I'm going to have to square both sides. And when I'm squaring this, I'm timesing all of it by itself. So I put my brackets in, and I use my square notation. So n is equal to by minus 3 all squared. If there's any points that you've struggled with, please go back, watch the video again. Please make sure that you are checking answers as you try them, and please make sure that you're pausing the video when I say, and you are actually attempting these questions. That's the way to get the most out of these videos.